Hey pals, I'm here today to do a sort of smallish book haul, or small, it's quite big for me because I don't tend to buy a lot of books at once anymore, but I somehow managed to do that in the last few weeks. So I think I've got 9 books to show you here, and I thought I would maybe just have this be a bit more chatty, so I just feel like filming a more casual video, so I hope you're okay with that. So the first book I am actually currently reading, this is the only non-fiction of the pile, and that is Without Warning and Only Sometimes, Scenes from an Unpredictable Childhood by Kit Dewal. I loved My Name is Leon, which I know loads and loads of people did, and I've read 2 more of her books, The Trick to Time and Supporting Cast, and I found both of them quite forgettable, but I felt like I'd really enjoy her writing in a memoir, and I am. I have about 80 pages left, and yeah, this feels like probably like a solid 4-star read for me. So this is the story of her sort of growing up, childhood and early adolescence in Birmingham. Her mother is white Irish, her father is black Jamaican, and they were relatively poor when she was growing up because her father tended to spend money on like really flash things rather than like food for the family and clothes that the children needed. So the relationship she has with each of her parents is really interesting and quite focused on. And also her mother became a Jehovah's Witness and sort of joined all the children in with that, but her father never did. He was always completely separate from that, and so that is included in the book. Not as much as I expected from the description, which is absolutely fine. I'm very much enjoying this. It feels really nostalgic. Like Kit Dewal is a bit older than me, but it feels really nostalgic for you know, these earlier years growing up in Britain, and it just has lots of sort of cozy vibes that I really recognise you know, from when I was much younger. So yeah, I'm enjoying that one. And then what else did I pick up? I picked up quite a few fantasy novels, so I'll go through those quickly. The first one is absolutely bloody massive, and that is The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams. This is the first book in the Memory, Sorrow and Fawn trilogy, although the third book is like 1,600 pages, so it's been split into 2 800-page books. So almost like a 4-book series because they're so bloody big, but yeah, actually printed, well they're not printed as 3, but you know, like sold as 3. Yeah, so it's this big. It is 930 pages. That really smells good. It smells very like no one's read it, and like, you know, really strong papery scent. So this series came out, did it come out in the 90s? I think it did, 1988, 89, and I've heard really good things about it. I think this is very like of its time, in that it's like young boy coming of age, sort of some type of apprenticeship, realise that he is like of some importance in big epic world events, and there's some type of quest. It sounds great. It opens in a castle, and like the cozy autumn vibes are like peak. So I am hoping to read this month. I have really high hopes of this like being at least a strong 4-star read. I do find the first book in fantasy trilogies aren't necessarily always 5 stars for me because there's a lot of explaining to do. And usually like the second and the third are more likely to be 5-star. So I'll be really disappointed though if this is less than 4, because I would love to find a new fantasy author to you know, fall in love with, because I think he's still publishing books now. So yeah, there is that one. And then I have 3 cute mass market paperbacks. I've always been a bit against Albus. Oh God, he just managed to creep himself into our cupboard. I'm sure he's going to hurt himself in there. There's loads of stuff in there. Albus, be careful. Yeah, he doesn't like it. He's come straight out. Why are you being bad? So I always didn't like mass market paperbacks. I don't like how they look on a shelf, and I also think they usually have quite bad covers. But recently I've started to feel a bit more warm towards them. And I think in large part it's because I've realised that if done really, really well and not like offensive and tropey, I think 80s and 90s fantasy is like what I'm really into. I'm just not really enjoying what is being published in fantasy nowadays. I feel like it leans much towards like really fast paced. It feels a bit more focused. I feel like a lot of what's being published in fantasy nowadays, not all of it, but a lot of it, leans more towards YA readers who are growing out of YA and want to step into their first adult fantasy. So it still has lots of the themes and the writing styles for me of YA, and just doesn't feel like the type of fantasy I want. it's not slow enough paced. I don't think the writing style is detailed or descriptive enough, and I think there's still a lot of like insta-love and like yearnings that I'm not really into. So yeah, discovering that I think I prefer older books, and they tend to be mass market. And now I'm thinking maybe I don't mind collecting them if I have a lot of them and they're all like lined up together. So the first one is the third book in the Winds of the Foreland series by David B. Coe, and that is Bonds of Vengeance. Chris from Chris's Bookish Cauldron recommended this series to me, and I'm really enjoying it, and wanted to try and finish it by the end of the year. There's 5 books in it, but I don't think that's going to happen just because I have so many books on my shelves I need to read. So I'm thinking I'll get to this in November and then like read one every other month, so like January and then March maybe. So yeah, very excited about it. I think he has another series out, maybe a trilogy, but I don't know if that's supposed to be any good, but if it is, I will go to that after this. I won't tell you what this is about. I've spoken about it a couple of times. I spoke about it in my last reading wrap up, so I'll link that above so you can hear what the series is about if you are interested. Very, very good political fantasy, if I was putting it in a really short sentence. And then I went to London yesterday and saw the wonderful Lauren from Lauren and the Books. We haven't seen each other in 3 years. Lauren and David were supposed to come and stay with us. I can't even remember what month it was supposed to be now, but it was cancelled because of the lockdown. And then we were sort of trying to rearrange things, and obviously, you know, it's been really difficult over the last few years. So we finally managed to meet for the day, and we went to Mildred's, which is a vegan restaurant, and had an amazing lunch and just chatted absolutely loads, caught up as much as we could in those hours, and yeah, like went to a couple of bookshops, had a wander, and it was just delightful. And yeah, just definitely want to try and do it more now that things are like hopefully a little bit easier. And it was nice doing it on a Friday as well. Like I always go to London on Saturdays usually for book shopping, and it was that little bit quieter. Still insanely busy. I live in a really small city. There's like 200,000 people who live in Norwich. So yeah, just incomparable to London. But yeah, it was still really nice. So we went in Forbidden Planet because I was like, oh, you know, I really want to go in a bookshop that's more focused on fantasy, because like I have a pretty big Waterstones in Norwich for the size of the city, but the fantasy section is absolutely rubbish. Like books that are, they're pretty good for like new release fantasy, but if you're looking for anything that's a bit earlier, shit. Like Tad Williams, that series I've just spoken about, is really well known. Don't have any of them in stock. They only have his new books out. So I was like, I really want to go in Forbidden Planet and just, you know, have a proper browse. The problem was, it's Forbidden Planet, the book section is downstairs. It's in like a basement and you have no signal. And so many books from like the 80s and the 90s in fantasy, I've realised they don't mark on them, one, if they're part of a series, and two, if they are, what book in the series they are. And I had no signal. So it was pretty tricky to like get as many books as I would have liked to, because I just couldn't tell where in the series they were. And also I'll say, for a book that, you know, focuses on science fiction and fantasy, I still think their selection was pretty shoddy. Like Lauren and I were both interested in seeing what Juliet Marillier books they had, and we couldn't even find them. And then Lauren went and asked one of the people who worked there, and they showed her where they were, and they only had her newest trilogy. And I just think she's pretty well known. Like, and also the Massive Foils didn't have a single Juliet Marillier book. So I do think it's still a lot to do with female authors. Like, I think they had a lot of fantasy written by men. I don't think they had anywhere near as many written by women. So I definitely want to look into if there are any other fantasy sci-fi focused bookshops in London. Let me know if you know of any, because next time I go there, I would like to have a proper browse. And hopefully there's internet in there so I can make sure I'm actually buying the first book in a series. But yeah, but I did manage to grab a couple. So the first one I picked up in there I was already aware of, so I didn't have to worry about the whole like first book in a series drama, because I knew this was the first book in a series. And they actually had books from 3 of this author's series, but this was the one I was aware of like being the most celebrated, and that is Mystic and Ryder, which is the first book in the 12 Houses series by Sharon Shin. I've read a standalone by this author called Summers at Castle Alban, which I really enjoyed. Plot is pretty forgettable, but it had really nice sort of cosy fantasy vibes, which is what I sometimes feel like and don't read enough of books like that. Sharon Shin, I think all of her books are classed as YA, but they were published at a time when YA wasn't really a thing, probably just before YA really became a thing. So I was born in 1990. So when I was a teenager, there was literally a section in the bookshop called 13 and Up, and it was literally in my bookshop like one section like this wide. There wasn't much to choose from. So I sort of stopped reading young adult books completely at the age of about 15, and like just immediately stopped browsing that section of the bookshop because I'd read them all, and went over to adult fiction. I think there's lots more choice. Well, I know there's lots more choice now if you're a teen in this era. But because of that, the genre hadn't really sort of found its place like it has now in terms of the tropes that are in fantasy, the writing style, the pace that's expected. And so this book would be classed as YA, but doesn't really fit the brief of what we now think of as YA. And this is the type of YA I enjoy. So yeah, I'm really excited about this one. What I know is there's this growing dissent about magic in this realm. And the king refuses to like ban it because people think his wife could have used magic to like enchant him. And it says that he dispatches the mystic Seneth to assess the threat throughout the realm. Accompanying her is a motley band of magic users and warriors, including, and I could be saying all these names wrong, Taze, first among the king's riders, who holds a hard view of mystics in general and Seneth in particular. And yeah, I think this is sort of like a quest narrative. I think there could be like a training school element from what I've heard. And yeah, I mean, the cover has like very autumnal colours, which I'm excited about. So yeah, we'll definitely like pick this up one Sunday afternoon and hopefully really enjoy it, because I would love to have a long series to go through. And another thing I'll say about mass market paperbacks, so bloody cheap. This was £7.50, but there was loads in there that were like £5.99. So I was like, I never pay that little for a book unless it's secondhand. So that's another positive. Then I'd heard of this author, as in like when I saw the name, I was like, I feel like I recognise that, but like wasn't super aware enough of them to know what books they'd published. I was literally browsing all the mass market paperbacks, which were just muddled up everywhere. And if they had a woman's name, I was looking at them. Like that was my criteria, because obviously like we didn't spend a ton of time actually browsing because we were just like chatting and catching up. So I didn't want to like spend a gazillion hours in there because I wanted to talk to Lauren. So I saw there was loads of mass market books in this author's name, and that is Jennifer Robeson. And I pulled this one out and I was like, that is a brilliant cover. I really like the vibes and the art style. Like, I think this is like way better than a lot of mass market books I see, like the art and the covers. And so I was like, oh, like this could be absolutely shit. And I don't know because I can't look at reviews. I've since looked at reviews. It's sitting at like 3.90 on Goodreads, which I'm absolutely fine with. I don't tend to love to read fantasy if it's got less than 3.60. And the reasons for that are people are so overly glowing about fantasy books that if it's got 3.60, in all likelihood it's not going to be very good. Obviously there are exceptions to that rule. So this is actually an omnibus. This has got 2 books in it, and it's around 600 pages, so they're obviously quite short fantasy books. I tend to not think I enjoy short fantasy books, but I'm willing to see if I'm wrong. So it says this fantasy series is called The Chronicles of the Chilsuli. I mean, I could be saying this wrong as well. And it says the Chilsuli are a race of magical warriors gifted with the ability to assume animal shapes at will. For centuries, they had been allies to the king of Hermana, treasured champions of the realm, until a king's daughter ran away with a Chilsuli liegeman and caused a war of annihilation against the Chilsuli race. You are following their daughter 25 years later, and her struggle to master the call of magic in her blood and accept her place in an ancient prophecy she cannot deny. So, female protagonist, animal magic, brilliant cover. I'm intrigued, so interested in that one. Also fingers crossed, because I thought like all of her books sound interesting to me, so there is that. Then what else do I have? I have 2 short story collections. I used to read so many short story collections back like probably like 5, God, maybe even longer than that ago. I used to be really good at reading short story collections. I've really got out of the habit in the past few years. I'm trying to get back into it. And there was loads of short story collections that came out this year that I was interested in. And I decided to just treat myself to a couple of them. And yeah, fingers crossed. So the first one I picked up is Bliss Montage by Ling Ma. Ling Ma is the author of Severance, which I really enjoyed, and I know lots of people did. And yeah, this is her first short story collection. One thing I will say is, I agree that this is a brilliant cover. Like, loads of people really like this cover. But what I was quite disappointed in is just the way this has been published. This is published by Text Publishing, and I think they're an Australian publisher. And this just feels so cheaply published, almost like it's a like small format textbook. Like, I think that glossiness sort of adds to that. But yeah, like even the back, like the way the blurb printed, I'm just not into. So yeah, that's just a little aside, like not a fan of the way this has been printed. So yeah, I don't tend to read a lot of fabulist, absurdist, magical realism stuff anymore. I used to absolutely adore it. But I thought I would still give this one a go. I will say I read the first 2 pages of the first short story and was a bit like, oh, don't know if this is going to work for me. So we will see. It says that this book brings us 8 wildly different tales of people making their way through the madness and reality of our collective delusions. Okay, so here's a couple of examples. A woman lives in her house with her husband, her children, and all her ex-boyfriends. A toxic friendship is built around a shared experience, taking a drug that makes you invisible. And an ancient ritual might heal you of anything if you bury yourself alive. So we shall see. I just tend to feel more now that my number one desire in reading is to feel a connection to the characters, even if that connection is to not like them. I never want to feel held at arm's length. And what I started to find with more like absurdist stuff is that you do feel held at arm's length. And so I'm worried this might be the case, but we shall see, fingers crossed. Let me know if you read it and what you thought. Then one of the most beautiful books I bought, probably the most beautiful book I bought this year actually, is Buffalo is the New Buffalo by Chelsea Vowell. This is quite a chunky short story collection. Short story collections are usually quite short. This is over 300 pages. That is obviously just absolutely stunning. And I'm very excited. One thing I will say is I've had a sort of browse through this and it feels like it could maybe be mixing a little bit of non-fiction in. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. Like if some of these are like slightly like essays, which I'm interested in, but had no awareness of from reading the blurb. It says, inspired by classic and contemporary speculative fiction, Buffalo is the New Buffalo explores science fiction tropes through a Métis lens. A two-spirit roguery in the 19th century tries to solve a murder in her community and joins the, I don't know how to say that word, so I'm going to write it along here because I don't want to butcher it, to successfully stop colonial expansion into the West. A Métis man is gored by a radioactive bison, gaining super strength, but losing the ability to be remembered by anyone not related to him by blood. How good does that sound? Nanites babble to babies in Cree, virtual reality teaches transformation, foxes take human form and wreak havoc on hearts, buffaloes roam free, and beings grapple with the thorny problem of healing from colonialism. Just sounds really interesting. Same could apply with both of these. Will they be too weird for me to connect to them? I don't know, but I'm still really intrigued by both. So yeah, excited to get to both of those. And then I have 2 more books to show you. I've been making my way through Maggie Farrell's books, okay? I read her memoir first, and then I went back to the start, but then I cheated and read Hamnet. So I've read I Am, After You'd Gone, My Lover's Lover, The Distance Between Us, Hamnet. Then I cheated and just randomly read instructions for a heatwave earlier this year because it was the summer, even though that wasn't the next book in the order. The next book in the order is The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox by Maggie Farrell. And I think once I've read this one, I only have 2 left. Although that's not true. I also have a newest book, which I'm not massively intrigued by. I'm not that interested in that historical period. So let me know if you've read it and what your thoughts are. This is the one I always found the most interesting blurb-wise of all of her books because I'm massively into like the split narrative, something happening in the present, finding out about somebody in the past. So it says, Edinburgh in the 1930s, the Lennox family is having trouble with its youngest daughter. Esme is outspoken, unconventional, and repeatedly embarrasses them in polite society. Something will have to be done. Years later, a young woman named Iris Lockhart receives a letter informing her that she has a great aunt in a psychiatric unit who is about to be released. It says, what could Esme have done to warrant a lifetime in an institution? And how is it possible for a person to be so completely erased from a family's history? Cannot wait. I think what Maggie Farrell does absolutely brilliantly is delve into family dynamics around a secret. So this just sounds like it's completely exploring that theme. So excited. And then I thought I would just show you one of my library books. I'm not going to show you all of the new ones because a lot of the new ones were featured in my autumn TBR, which I'll link up here somewhere. But this is one of the books I'd requested that is not on my autumn TBR and I'm hoping to read very, very soon because I'm very excited by it. and that is Best of Friends by Camilla Shamsie. I've not read any of this author's previous books. I've heard really good things. She's an author I've always been interested in. As soon as I saw this title, I was like intrigued. And yeah, I really love reading books about friends. This is again a split narrative. This is set in 1988 in Karachi. You follow two 14-year-old girls and you follow them as Pakistan's dictatorship falls and a woman comes to power, and something happens between them that sort of makes everything go wrong, and it says they are powerless to change the outcome. And then you follow the same two women in present day London who are really influential, and it says they are bound together by loyalties, disloyalties, and the memory of that night, which echoes through the present in unexpected ways. Now both have power and both have very different ideas of how to wield it. I think that sounds brilliant. I love books about female friendship. I love books that have that coming of age narrative, and I also, like I said, love split narratives. So this sounds like it could be like a 5-star read for me. We shall see. Also let me know if you've read this one or if you're planning to. I think this came out very recently, both in the UK and North America. So yeah, those are all of my new books. I should read them all by the end of the year because that is what I'm attempting. So you should hear me talk about them very, very soon. Fingers crossed. I said I was going to be quite chatty. I don't know if I managed that. I feel like I just rambled a lot about all of the books. But this video is long enough. So I'm now going to go stop and I think have some lunch. I have picked myself up chestnut and cranberry seitan sandwich from my favourite vegan cafe because I just bought the Christmas sandwiches out, which I know seems too early, but it is never too early to have chestnut and cranberry in a sandwich as far as I'm concerned. And I also picked up some vegan donuts from a company called Doodles Donuts. I'll link them down below. I don't know if they ship, but they are fairly locally based to me, but not in Norwich. And I went in the library to pick up my books, and they had a little stall, and they had loads of their donuts were like autumnal Halloween flavours. I, shock horror, do not like filled donuts. I'm like a really unfussy eater, I say as a vegan, but like I'm not put off by like many flavours or textures. But one thing I really don't like is when you bite into something and something oozes out. So I don't like chocolates with a wet centre. And I really don't like filled donuts, and I'm not a massive fan of pies either, like when you cut into a pie and like loads of stuff just floods out, absolutely rank. And quite a lot of them were filled, but I got a couple of, they look like little mummies. They've got like all the white stripes with bandages, and little blueberries for eyes, and they've got like blueberry jam through the donut, but not filled. Then I also got an apple and cinnamon donut, it looks delicious. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you've got any of these books. Let me know your thoughts on mass market paperbacks, and feel free to recommend me some like old school fantasy, the cheesiest mass market cover you can find. I'd be interested to see who wins with the like most ugly or cheesiest cover. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.